This is side 1. Today's date is August 18, 1995. And this is an interview with Sister Mary Alma Brunk. And I am Sister Helen Wolf. I'm doing the interviewing. Sister, when and where were you born?
I was born in about 12 miles south of Springfield in Sangamon County in 1902, May the 13th.
So that's almost a century, isn't it? You've lived almost a century. You're 93 years old?
Yes, I'm beginning to feel like it's a century.
I'm sure you are. I'd like you to tell me something about the Brunks, about your family, where they came from, how they happened to come to Illinois.
They were located on a little island near Norway and Sweden. They came to America and landed where it is now New York, the Bronx in New York, and they say that the Bronx in New York was named for the Bronx. In those days, they spelled B-R-U-N-K, B-R-O-N-K, B-R-O-N-C-K. Didn't make any difference about the spelling. But they say they landed where the Bronx is, and the Bronx in New York is named for my family.
Very, very interesting. How did they happen to come to Illinois then? Did they come immediately to Illinois then?
Well, eventually, when one of the boys was assumedly very rich. He had a silk shirt, and the other one wasn't so well off, but the one with the silk shirt moved up to the north quite a way, and eventually they came over to Ohio, and from Ohio the descendants moved over to Illinois, just 12 miles south of Springfield.
Did they come here then to farm because there was a lot of farmland?
They were homesteaders. They had to clear the land.
Mm-hmm.
And my great-grandfather had a kiln, and they said his pottery was the finest there was.
Wonderful. I bet when he built the home then, he probably built it with bricks that he made in the kiln, did he?
No, it was pottery that he made. They said it was fine pottery.
I'm sure it was.
My sister Helen still has a little piece of it.
That's wonderful.
And they had a log cabin, 2 rooms. They had to add to it later. They had a family of 8 children, all living there in the...
One of which was your father, right? One of which, of those 8 children, was your father?
Yes, my father was born there in the log cabin. It's just 12 miles out of Springfield, but the log cabin has been raised. It's been gone a long time. But I remember it. I used to play in it. There was a fireplace that my great-grandmother sat by and knitted socks for the sons. Yeah.
So was that near Lake Springfield then? You said it was south of Springfield?
Yeah, about 12 miles. It's after they moved out of the log cabin, I remember the log cabin, and I remember the the ruins of the kill that was just south of the log cabin. And they built a new house, which I think must have been a mansion in those days. The railing on the stairway was solid walnut. Of course, that wasn't so much in those days because that's what they built with until the walnut was all gone.
Mm-hmm.
But the house must have been something because it had 4 rooms downstairs, a big hallway and a beautiful open stairway, and 3 bedrooms upstairs, and then a back stairway which was enclosed, and 2 big porches. And eventually the log cabin, well, I suppose it fell down, but I remember it very well, which I'm very happy about.
So this would have been right at the turn of the century then, because you were born in 1902, so that was built before 1900 probably. And you remembered seeing it, remembered being there.
Oh, yeah. And they have a cemetery close. Well, of course, the first one to die had to be buried close. There were no cemeteries. That's why all these little cemeteries in the country started. And when my great-grandfather died, they buried him on their timberland, just a short distance from their house. It's on the edge of the Lake Springfield now. Thank goodness it was on high land, or it hadn't been moved with the lake coming in. And now there's 4 generations of Brooks buried there.
Did you actually live in that house? Or you just went to visit where your grandparents lived?
Yeah, I didn't live there. That's where my grandmother lived, and I used to go stay a week with her at a time. Always go over to the cemetery.
Yes. I remember being at the cemetery. I remember taking you there once, and that was just really a thrill.
Yeah. Anybody that wants to take me riding, I always want to go to the cemetery.
I remember that.
But it's beautiful land. It's a beautiful drive.
I remember that. So then, when you lived, I'm sure you lived not too far away from there. You said you were born 12 miles south of Springfield. So did your father farm? What did your father do then?
Yes, my grandfather had he had land that he could give each one of his sons a farm when they were married. And my father's farm joined the home land and was just south about a mile from his home place. We used to walk through the fields to Grandma's house.
over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. Yeah. Did you celebrate like Christmas and things like that at grandmother's, Thanksgiving? Or did you celebrate those
Yes, we used
family celebrations?
Yeah, we used to go to Grandma's I think we went to Grandma's for Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything.
Had all the children came home, all 8 of the children.
Oh yes, they all came home, and I remember a little dish Grandma gave to my mother, and later in life, not too long after that, our little 5-room house burned, and that little dish came through the fire without a nick on it.
Isn't that
My
something?
brother still has it.
So what happened when your own home burned? Then did you have to build another one, I suppose?
On the same
On the
site.
same
Yes, on the same site.
Mm-hmm.
My father built a lovely home, which still stands, and my brother and his wife and children occupy now.
How many were in your family? You mentioned a brother and yourself.
In my family, 3 girls and then 3 boys. 3 of us living now and 3 deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And my father called himself an old Quaker. And he said the children could do anything they wanted to in religion when they're grown up, when they have grown up. Therefore, my mother, who had been raised a Catholic, didn't get to raise as Catholic, but she had us baptized.
As children?
Babies.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the 6 children, 5 of us became Catholic, and my youngest brother married a staunch Methodist, and he became a Methodist, and they go to church every Sunday. They're as dedicated as the Catholics are. My brother's little girl told Sister Gertrude Ann when we were visiting, she said, "I believe everybody should go to church every Sunday,
Good for her.
whether they're Catholic or not."
Good for her. At what age then did you become a Catholic? Did you enter the church?
Well, I was 20. No, I was 20. But I had to do it secretly. Father Moisen discovered that I wanted to be a Catholic, but I didn't want to go against my father's faith. My mother did everything she could possibly do to avoid any conflict in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And but he was a staunch man, a wonderful character. Everybody looked up to Uncle Charlie.
They called him.
Oh yes, when Dad appeared on the scene, everything straightened up pretty nice. And then, when my mother was very ill, and I went to the telephone to call the priest. Dad says, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to call the priest." "Well, call the doctor," he said. "I'm going to call the priest first."
Good for you.
So I didn't know any place else. I called in here at St. Joseph's, and a priest, the assistant, came out, 12 miles out of town. And that went kind of against Dad's idea, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't make an issue of it at all. He was a gentleman through it all.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, Father Moisen in here at St. Joseph's told us to contact Father Smith out in the Vernon. That was our parish.
Mm-hmm.
So Father Smith came the next time. Father Smith could detect the staunchness of Dad like we kids did, and he acted like we did. He was a young man then, and he said when he talked to my mom, she was just as if she had never been out of the church. Just everything that had been in her heart all these years. And then when Father Smith appeared on the scene one day without me having to call him, oh my goodness, I felt like the gates of heaven had opened up. Because here I wasn't born educated Catholic. I was just a young girl myself.
Showed what great respect you had for the church and for the ministers in the church.
It shows the strength of the grace that God gives us.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful.
I never crossed Dad. I don't remember ever crossing him, except when I went to the telephone to call the priest.
That was a special grace then, wasn't it?
I was driven to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know how important it was to your mother. That's right. That's right. You mentioned that your father was a Quaker. Was there a Quaker church in this area?
Oh yes, I don't know whether it's a Quaker church or not, but when Dad was growing up, Billy Sunday went around the country preaching and preaching. I don't know whether he was a Quaker or what he was, but he took the whole countryside in. That's the only religion Dad had. Only I know he had a good raising. I know his dad and his mother were good characters. Oh my Dad he was. And then when I came to the convent, Monsignor Driscoll says, "Now, what are you going to do about telling your father?" And I said, "Well, after I get to the convent, I'll write to him." And he read the letter, and my sister-in-law, who lived there then, said, "Oh, she's in great business, but she'll be happy." Who came to see me the first visiting day? My father, as proud as he could be. "Now, when will you get the black veil?"
So he was really very happy for you to have become a
He
Catholic.
came every visiting day, proud as he could be.
How that must have made you feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Uh-huh. Well, you mentioned when you came to the convent. You want to talk a little bit about what life was like in the convent when you came as a postulant? Who was the novice mistress? And
My postulant mistress was nobody less than Sister Kathleen Walsh. And you know how lovely, lovely, lovely she was.
mm-hmm.
A wonderful person. I've always loved her so much. She was very watchful over us, but not stern. She told me one time when she fell heir to that position, she said, "I didn't know any more about it than you did." I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing.
She told you that later, I presume.
Oh, many years.
Well, who was the novice mistress then at that time?
No less than little Sister Virginia.
So there was it because there were so many in the novitiate that they separated it and had one in charge of postulants and one in charge of novices?
I think that was, they said that because there were so many of us.
Mm-hmm.
18 of us.
Mm-hmm. In your class.
Mm-hmm.
I was was wondering how many came.
And Sister Kathleen was so lovely.
What kinds of things did you do as postulants?
We had parties out in the laundry.
You would remember the parties.
They meant so much to me. I was always interested in parties. We used to have parties at home. If we didn't have a big party for everybody in the community and dances and all, we had little parties of just the family, and we'd get up and give a speech. My mother would play the piano and we'd dance.
Oh. Did you celebrate birthdays, all your birthdays at home?
No, we didn't. We weren't. Well, I guess my mom had so many birthdays in the family, she didn't have time to. It was later that I had a birthday party for my little brother one time with just one candle on it. I baked a little 1-egg cake and put a candle on it.
How cute.
That was the first birthday cake.
Good. So what did you do as a postulant besides have parties?
Cleaned house.
Worked?
Worked. I remember they cleaned the chapel very well one time. One of my part in cleaning the chapel was getting down on the floor and polishing the bricks there at the entrance to the chapel. And I didn't get to work on it very long. Sister Virginia said that was enough. My face gets so red with a little activity. I think she's afraid and I wasn't young. I think she's afraid I was going to have a stroke.
Did you, go ahead.
But of all things, I had to do all the sewing. And the rest of them out washing windows, which I'd much rather been doing. I was there sewing, so.
Because did you knew how to sew when you came, I bet?
Oh, sewed all my life, and for 10 years I had a position at Dirksen sewing.
I was going to ask you what you did, what work you did.
Sewed.
You sewed. Well, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Well, it is for those that don't sew, and those were a bunch of kids just out of high school. They hadn't sewed. I made all their profession habits.
Mantles, probably?
Yes. Sister, one of the young sisters, Janice, she helped me. She was very, she could sew pretty good. She helped me a lot with the mantles. Nice to look back upon.
Right. What about the prayer schedule? What was it like when you were in the novitiate?
Well, I had been used to going to Mass every morning. I go to Mass, then I get my breakfast and be at work at 8 o'clock. For 10 years I lived that way.
I asked what the prayer schedule was.
Oh, I remember the prayer schedule and the dinner schedules and everything. The bells would ring, and when the bell would ring, the little postulants would say, "Do we eat or pray?" And it was mostly pray.
Yeah. So I think we had the little office at that time, the little office of the Blessed Mother.
Yes, that's
right.
What
we had. That's a long time ago.
And I remember Monsignor Driscoll, he's the one that guided me. He said, now, you'll be with a bunch of kids that drive you crazy. And then later on you'll be with older people, but I worship those kids. I was just at the age that most of their mothers were. And I really idolized those kids, and I still do. I feel like I have a monopoly on them.
What was the food like? Did you have good food?
Oh yes, the food was delicious. We had pie every laundry day. Oh my, we liked the pie. I ate 2 pieces each time.
Did you take any classes while you were a apostolate novice? Was there any?
It seemed to me Monsignor Hogg gave us some classes in
Some kind of theology, probably. Or class.
Basics.
Did you have vow class with Sister Virginia? Did she teach you about the vows?
Sister Virginia taught us about the vows. Sister Virginia was a wonderful novice mistress. There's no doubt she was a wonderful, wonderful religious. But oh my, she enjoyed life too, you know. When we would put on little shows for parties or something, she'd just laugh and laugh. I enjoyed her so much. One time she was to give a speech, a 5-minute speech, why she liked ice cream. And of course, who but Sister Virginia she never had her likes or her dislikes. Never. But she sat there and she says, I like ice cream. I like ice cream. I don't care whether it's in just a flat clay dish or whether it's the finest china we have. I have to have my ice cream. Oh, she says, I think that's 5 minutes. When we left Sister Kathleen and then we went up to Sister Virginia, all these young postulates were so frightened. They knew that, but she was wonderful, and they loved her. They loved her so much.
You said you had to go up. Did you live on a different floor?
Oh yeah, we lived. Well, how was the situation? I don't think I'd go up. We
lived in the dormitory?
We lived over there in the
Du Bois?
Du Bois.
Okay.
That's where we were when we were novices. And then, I don't remember if it was down some steps or up some steps to Sister Virginia. And then we lived in little cells.
What was your reception day like when you received the habit? Do you have any recollection of that?
My sister, who is deceased, came for reception day, and my brother and his wife, who are Methodists, they came to my reception day. Sister Anna Claire helped me get dressed. She lived out in the country, close to my home, near Glenarm. And I was glad to see all the priests there.
Did your father come? Was he still living?
No, oh yes, he was living, but he didn't come. But he came every visiting. He didn't miss one. I thought that was noble loving.
Did you wear a bridal dress?
Oh, yeah. I found it up in the attic.
You didn't make it?
No, but it fit, was beautiful. My sister said I looked beautiful.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
I found a pair of slippers up there. satin, white satin.
And the veil?
Well, I had a veil, but I don't remember where it came from. Up there too, I guess, in the attic. Helen, Sister Helena, got her veil up in the attic. Lots of them got their veils from relatives.
Mm-hmm.
But all my relatives had been married for about 40 years, you know. There was no new brides in our family by the time I was that age.
Mm-hmm.
So, as luck would have it, it fit me. And Sister Mary Alice wore it the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many wore it after that. But I enjoyed the novitiate very much.
What was different? Did you find it very different? You mentioned that the younger sisters were kind of scared about going up. Did you find being a novice very different from being a postulant?
But Sister Virginia told me, she says, I can tell you this, but I can't tell them, you know.
Because you were older and would understand better.
Yes, and
This is side 2. Today's date is August 21st, 1995, and I'm continuing my interview of Sister Mary Alma Brunk. Sister Mary Alma, you lived through some very important times in the history of our country, and I would just like to ask you to share some of your remembrances of them, if you will. For example, World War I. You would have been a teenager at that time. Do you have any special recollections of anything that happened?
yes, my sister's boyfriend was in the Navy. He enlisted. He was just a little bit young, but he got in to the Navy. And he went east, but I really don't recall just where he was east. I really don't remember any details about him going or him coming back otherwise than he brought my sister a pair of pink silk stockings. I think they were from Paris. I remember thinking those pink silk stockings were just out of this world. I mean baby pink.
Did she wear them?
I don't think so. I think I'm the one that wore them.
Oh, really?
I think I'm the one that wore them and got a runner in them that night. I don't remember Kate ever wearing them. Then after the war was over, they were married. I wore that, Kate gave me the Navy, one of the Navy blouses that he had given her. I wore it to high school, and I thought I was dressed up. All the girls were wearing Navy blouses of some kind, but I thought mine was special.
Mm-hmm.
It had been in the service.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was special. It was special.
It was special. Mm-hmm. And now that's during the First World Wars when I learned to knit. A young lady in our neighborhood got a lot of khaki yarn, and she had a nice big home, a nice big country home, and she had loads of yarn, and she invited all the ladies to come and knit, learn to knit, whatever they could do, and also make bandages.
Mm-hmm. What did you knit? Stockings or?
I learned by starting a scarf, and then I went on to socks, but she had to do the hard part of the socks for me. They all were khaki. And I remember she made a sweater, a beautiful sweater, and it had her boyfriend's initials knitted into the front of it. I thought that was something out of this world. And I went to, it was about 1.5 miles in the country from my home to her home. I always went to the knitting club horseback.
Oh, really?
And then time went on.
Do you remember anything like when the war was over? Any excitement about that?
When the war was over, I was in high school at that time, and I drove a horse hitched to a buggy about 9 miles to high school, and I was about halfway to school in the morning when one of the neighbors who was, well, I don't know whether he was on a horse or whether he was driving a wagon, but he had a team of horses, but he stopped me and he said, "The war is over."
Oh, isn't that interesting? That was how you found out about it.
That's down near where Lake Springfield comes out to now, on the south end.
Well, that is a special remembrance for
That
sure.
That was beautiful news.
And I'm sure you remember then the boys coming home, the different neighbors getting out of the service.
Yes, I know my sister and her boyfriend were married soon. Kate was just 4 years older than I.
Any other recollections about it?
Well, we had a benefit show. All the young people in the community were in the show, and it was in a Methodist church in the area, and almost everybody was in the show. I don't know who came to as an audience. I guess Grandma and Grandpa and the little kids. I was about the youngest one in the show. I had a little Red Riding Hood, and I don't remember what the name of the show.
So who benefited from it? Who?
Red Cross.
Oh, the Red Cross. You gave the money to the Red Cross.
I think especially for supplies. I don't imagine we made much money.
But it was the idea that you were doing your part to help in the war effort. Yes.
Our air conditioning was one electric fan, but I don't remember we suffered so much. That church has been raised, and it was in the area of the lake. So when the lake came, the church went.
The Methodist church where you had the show. Right, sister, do you have any recollections about the Great Depression in the 30s?
Well, depression didn't phase us much because we always lived within our means.
Frugally?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And our expenses didn't exceed what we brought in. My mother dressed all of her children, 6 of us, in clothes she made from clothing that people gave her. And everybody said Mary's children always look so nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, when the Depression came along, it really, I didn't know, so maybe my father did.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that many neighbors lost their homes and their lands.
But your father did not.
Well, there were others that didn't also, you know.
So maybe he already had paid for his and didn't have a big loan on it or something, so.
Well, he fell heir to it.
Mm-hmm.
So he started out clear.
True.
But raising a family of 6 children, you know, that's expensive.
I remember at home, I can just barely remember the Depression, and we raised so much of our food that we had right on the farm, so that we did not have to buy it.
That's what we had too, in general.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to buy our supplies for the week, it would be sugar and flour in general.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes Dad would bring home some bananas or oranges, and that was a red letter day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, what are your recollections of the Second World War, World War II?
Well, my brother was in the Second World War, but he didn't bring any pink silk stockings home. He was in New Guinea.
In the Pacific. Mm-hmm.
In the Army.
Mm-hmm.
He landed in Australia. It was a secret when they went away. Nobody knew where they were going. And the boys knew the direction. They knew they were going down along the south shore of the continent. And they knew they went through the Panama Canal. And they knew they were going down to the southeast, and they landed in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't told. They just had to learn as they went along. And they were in Australia a while, preparing to go up into New Guinea. Then they went up into New Guinea, and what is it they call atheists that didn't believe in God?
Mm-hmm.
My brother said there were no atheists in the trenches. They all believed in God down there.
When they needed God, they
Mhm.
believed in God.
Yeah, that was good.
Mm-hmm.
One day they heard a boy yelling. They'd been out on the edge of in the water on the edge of the ocean, and they heard the boy yelling. They looked and saw an alligator taking him away. Nothing they could do about it. Oh, but there were a lot of things, of course, I know that my brother didn't tell. They fought their way through New Guinea, and my brother brought home a Jack flag covered with blood. He still has it. And then they went on into Bayak. My brother contacted malaria there. And the war was just practically over by that time, and he got, they sent him home in an airplane. And they also, Uncle Sam, he and his fiancée were married, and they had a nice furlough over in, not a furlough, what do you call it, a wedding, or whatever. They had a nice trip in Colorado Springs.
Like a honeymoon.
Honeymoon, that's what I mean.
And this was right after you got home that they were married.
Yes, lots of sadness, though. My poor old dad cried all the time during the wedding and after the wedding. Oh, bless his heart. Yeah, that was just the letdown of his heartache, knowing his little son was out there shooting people and being shot at.
Did you do, what were you doing during the war? Anything special for the war effort?
Well, for that war then I did Red Cross volunteer bedside nursing at Springfield Hospital and St. John's Hospital. But I was living in Springfield because I was working in Springfield.
Where were you working?
I was working at Dirkson's furniture store, making drapes and covering slip covers for the chairs. And I also, that's where I got my nursing, my Red Cross training was at Springfield Hospital.
Is that Memorial Hospital?
Yeah, Memorial, And then after we got our training, first it would be, the training was held at Springfield, at the Memorial Hospital, and then the next time was given, it was in St. John. My name came up for Springfield Hospital. And then we could volunteer our services, both either place or both. I went to both places. I'd go every night, every evening after work. We still weren't sewing a lot then because of the war condition. And then as time went on and our work picked up at the Dirksons, I had to save my strength for my job there.
When you say you volunteered at the hospital, was that because the nurses had gone into the service and they didn't have enough nursing care? Is that it?
And we did bedside nursing. There, of course, a few nurses had to be. Maybe they were the older ones, I don't know.
What do you remember about rationing? Did that have any recollection about that?
Well, not too much, because most of it was right there. For sugar, they had a substitute for sugar. Do you remember that? And little beads, sweetening. And I remember there were recipes that would take care of it. And my sister was 17, I think, then, and she was a pretty good little cook. I remember she made things with this sweetening product. They said it was made out of corn, I think. And well, we had plenty to eat. We just had it from the farm, our meat.
What about, I remember standing in line to get silk hose. Did you ever have to do that at the store?
Yes.
When they would have a shipment come in?
Well, I remember some of the ladies couldn't get them. I got a couple of pair, I think, because I had what do they call it, at Breast Mercy.
Like a credit or something, account.
And my clothing bill wasn't much, so I got along fine.
Okay. Well, Sister, we're gonna shift back now from talking about what was going on in the world, so to speak, back to what was going on in your life after you entered the Dominicans. We've already talked a little bit about why you came and when you came and your being in the novitiate and postulancy and so forth. Now I'd like to have you give us any reflections that you might have about your first mission, going out, what it was like teaching, so forth.
Well, Mother Imelda called me to her office one day, and she said, "Sister, I'm going to send you to Hampshire." I said, "Where's Hampshire?" "Well, it's up north and west. I'm awfully sorry that I have to send you, but I don't have a teacher." Sister Christine has to go to the hospital, and I would like for you to go up and take care of her class. So I couldn't go just then because all my clothes were in the laundry, and I could go then on a later train. And I don't remember how I went to Crystal Lake, I think on the train, and Sister Cecilia's Sister Cecilia's sister Aquinas met me. She was the superior at Crystal Lake. And seems to me I stayed there all night, and the next day they took me over to Hampshire, and I stood up in front of the class the next day, and I said to myself, well, if I was thrown out in the water, I'd swim. I wouldn't drown. So I stood there, and I had third, fourth, and fifth grades all in one room. And because I had went side by side with my sister Helen, she taught the country school in our neighborhood. I went to school a few times with her. I knew what she was doing, and subconsciously I was interested. I had a little experience. So I went along then with the children until Christmas vacation, and I came home for a retreat, and after retreat, Mother Imelda asked me, or told me, "You're not going back. What do you think they'll do?" And I said, "Close the school, I guess." And I was very disappointed by that time. I felt like the class belonged to me. Well, I didn't get turned around then until they sent me to Bradley, Sister Gertrude Ann, was very sick, and he had to go to the hospital, and of course she had 7th grade, and Sister Alice King left the 3rd grade and went down to take care of Sister Gertrude Ann's 7th grade, and they put me in the 3rd grade room. And this Sister Alice had trained those little children so well. I'll never forget them. They were precious. 60 3rd graders. They acted like little college children. They were lovely. See, Sister Lucille was principal there. And
How long were you in Bradley?
that half year and 2 more. Then I was sent to St. Edward's in Chicago, and I thought, oh my goodness, Chicago. Ooh. And Sister Mary Ruth was there, a wonderful person. And I fell there to 4th grade. Oh, I liked it so much. Oh my, I liked that 4th grade. And I was there 9 years. And I liked St. Ed so much. And Sister Mary Ruth stayed a few years after I got there. And then Sister Mary Isabel was the principal the last year that I was there. And that was when Miss Nostelli started this wonderful music program. Oh, I liked St. Ed so much. And then Sister Mary Ida Marie said she wanted me to go over to Our Lady of Grace.
So you went to Our Lady of Grace?
Oh yes, I went to Lady of Grace. I fell there to 3rd grade there. I don't know, and stepping down from 5th graders by the time I left my 4th grader to 2nd graders coming, I thought I'd lose my mind. Oh, it seemed so helpless, but I soon learned how to pull them out of that baby stage, and we went along fine. And I taught them square dancing, and we had a lovely rhythm band, and we just had a wonderful time. I was there then 17 years. Doesn't seem like that, but was there 17 years. But that age couldn't be shifted around very much.
And then you loved those children, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Sounds like every place you went, you fell in love with the children.
Yes, to the point of seeing that they learned. I wanted them to achieve. My goal was to prepare them for the future. That was so innate. I was very serious about that. And Sister, the principal, Rita Clare, sent some sheets of paper, 4 of them, of the math facts, the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And I had them duplicated.
Sister Mary Alma, I'd like to ask you what something about Vatican II, something about your recollection of it, and especially about how you experienced it in living in your own life.
I couldn't see that there was any difference.
Okay.
Sister Rita Clare, who was the superior at OLG, asked me to go with her up to the cathedral to listen to the talks about the Vatican II. And I was pleased to go, but I was very, very worried. And what I was worried about, I don't know, but I was very worried. I don't know what I thought they were going to do, but it turned out there wasn't anything that affected me at all. So I couldn't see. I just went on my daily life just the same, which pleased me.
What you're saying, I think, is that you had already decided how to live your religious life, and that you continued to do that, in spite of.
Yeah, I couldn't see that it affected me at all.
Okay.
So I quit worrying.
That's fine. Who in your life had the greatest influence on you, Sister Mary Alma?
Well, other than my mother, I think my father had great influence. Not by what he said, but what he expected of the rest of it. We all knew he expected us to be as upright as he was. And not only we, his children, had great respect for him and looked up to him. My mother taught us to do that, to have great respect for our father. But we had to respect him. There was no other way out. His nieces and his nephews respected him the same as we did. Yeah, he was a very fine man. He said we could choose our own religion when we got old enough. So when I came to the convent, who was the first one to come to see me on visiting day, and every visiting day, Dad. Even one time he said, "Now, when are you going to get to wear the black veil?" In other words, he wanted me to be promoted just like everybody else.
He was very pleased then that you had become.
Yeah, bless his heart, he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was very proud, he was very pleased, and very happy.
That's a wonderful memory to have of your father. Mary Alma Brunk. Today's date is September 19, 1995. Sister Mary Alma, we've covered a lot of things in your life, the places you've been and your family, and we talked a little bit about people who had an influence on your life. Were there any things that happened in your life that were kind of out of the ordinary?
Well, it was out of the ordinary for me, very much out of the ordinary. This is after I had finished teaching, and I was in the home.
Where were you at the time?
Our Lady of Grace. That was Our Lady of Grace. And Sisters Cabrini had retired from teaching, and she was visiting the sick and hospitals and the hospices. And she was in the house also when I got this call. I said, I haven't done anything. And she wanted to know if there was somebody that she could write about. that had done something special. I said, well, I haven't done anything special, but Sister Cabrini has. She's right here. I'll ask her to talk with you. She has been very spectacular in her work since she quit teaching school. I'll ask her to come and talk. Well,
Who was this that you were talking to?
Dolores.
And she was from where?
She was a news lady for the Catholic
Paper in Chicago. And she wanted to interview someone,
some
sister.
Yeah.
All right.
And I hadn't done anything spectacular at all. But Sister Cabrini, here she is right here. I'll let her talk with you. She's done many wonderful things since she quit teaching. All I had done is clean up the convent. And lots of closets and sub-basements, and I had cleaned them all out and did the washings on the in the mornings, the dish towels and whatnot. But Sister Cabrini has done many spectacular things. I'll let her talk with you. Well, now what's your name? I said, well, my name's Sister Alma, but I'll let you talk with Sister Cabrini. Well, she said, I'll send a young man out to take your picture. And the young man came out to take my picture within a half an hour. So I was sitting there knitting, and he took my picture. I don't have the picture now. I threw it away. I got kind of more or less more holy, you know. I didn't think I wanted to see my picture every time I turned around.
So where they put it in the paper then?
Well, right inside the main page. Turn the front page over and there was big as life.
And they wrote up the interview then about you?
Yeah, and then as I said before, there wasn't anything special. Nothing special at all.
What did you talk about?
Well, I've kind of forgotten what we did talk about. I kept insisting that they'd talk with Sister Cabrini. She was right there. Well, she had done so many wonderful things. What did I talk about? Oh, I can't remember. They want to know something about my ancestors. I remember that. And we homesteaded. My ancestors homesteaded out on, well, I don't know what they called it then. It's now Lake Springfield. My father had a kill. My great-grandfather had a kill and made some of the most beautiful china. Pottery, I guess you'd call it, because it was made of clay, crude clay. And not too long ago, just a few years ago, that kiln was excavated. And that was a great historical news piece. The pictures were in the paper. Some of the pottery, my sister has a piece of the pottery that was excavated, and other pieces. Of course, it was pieces that were broken when they fired them, and they just, when they did that, they just threw them out haywire. And as I said before, well, the reason how they happened to excavate was because dogs of the community had dug up pieces of china, and they were carrying them out there in the little area near the spot where the kill had been. And historians from the university out here found out about it, and they went out and excavated the kill. It was interesting. They put, when they were finished, they put sand on top, so if they ever want to excavate again, all they have to do is just shift out sand. And the log cabin was, of course, very close there, where my forefathers settled. And then when my great-great-grandfather died, there was no cemetery. No cemetery. And that's the way all these little cemeteries have gotten started. They buried great-grandpa out just a short distance from the log cabin. And now there's 4 or 5 generations buried there. But only those generations, nobody else. So the cemetery is very small yet. And to this day, when the sisters, my eye care sisters, want to take me driving, well, where would you like to go?
That's where you want to go. I think I've taken you there.
Always wanted to go out to the cemetery.
I don't blame you.
It's a beautiful spot on earth.
What did they do with your great-grandfather's kiln? Is it in the museum now?
No. They covered it back up with sand in case they ever want to excavate again. It'd be easy to throw sand out. Well, our little cemetery has remained very small because just the Brooks can be buried there. And I know it is very, very valuable land. It's on the lake.
Springfield.
Right on the lake, and thank goodness it's high up above the lake. Thank goodness for that. And the one that's here, that comes to see the sister LaFada. Dr. LaFada lives right next door to us.
Is that right?
Yeah. A beautiful big home. Next to Dr. LaFada, Dr. Romanelli. So we're all there together.
The Bronx and the doctors.
Well, we have a couple of doctors buried there of our own family.
Is that right? Who were they?
Dr. Harry's, John Southwick, and his mother was a Brunk.
I see.
Anne Brunk, and their son. And every time I get a chance to take a ride, where do I want to go out? It's a beautiful place on earth. It's beautiful, right on the lake.
Were there any other things in your life that were sort of extraordinary?
Well, this certainly is extraordinary, but very sad. When my sister's husband died at 32, leaving a little girl 8 years old and a little daughter 4 years old, and my sister, his wife. And in those days, they brought the body home in the casket. And I knew, I wasn't a Catholic then, I knew that when Catholics were laid in their caskets, they had rosaries in their hand, a rosary in their hand. So I went over to, my sister went with me, over to across a few blocks to St. Joseph's Church to see Father Moisen. That's when I met Father Moisen. And he thought I was the deceased's wife, because Kate and I looked alike. Many, many people were confused about. Even the little daughter came to me one time crying, and she looked up at me and the way she went.
When she realized you were not her mother.
No, yeah. It was her mother she wanted at that time. And he found out in the course of conversation that I was not a Catholic. And I said, always wanted to be, but my father didn't want me to be. He said I could be when I grew up, but I wasn't raised a Catholic. Well, he said, come back the day after the funeral, and you can start instructions. Well, my mother taught us never to cause any trouble with religion in the home. That was, my father said we could be of any religion we wanted to be when we grew up, but he didn't want us to be raised in Catholic religion. So, the day after the funeral, I went over and went every day for instructions from Father Moisen for about a month. Then I made my first Holy Communion with my dear sister, who, at the price of her husband's death, I became a Catholic. Then Father Moisen saw to that I was after First Communion confirmed. I went out to St. Patrick's because the bishop was going to confirm a group of children, and my very best friend was my what do you call it? Stood up with me for a confirmation. It wasn't easy for my sister to go on, and I don't think she felt like it anyhow. She'd had to have brought her 2 little children with her. My very dear friend was my sponsor. Well, let me see, that's when I was confirmed. Yeah, my very, very, very dear friend, Eleanor Mulcahy. And always, I wanted to be a nun. Now that seems so strange because I wasn't even a Catholic. I wanted to be a nun. And let me see, how did I become a nun?
Did you know any nuns?
No. No, I wasn't influenced by anybody. Didn't know anybody. And I always prayed to be a nun.
How did you know about nuns then?
In my heart. It's in the heart to be a nun. If it's not there, you're not a nun. So I've always prayed to be a nun. Well, this one evening, and every Saturday, I go to the cathedral after work. I'd go right after 5 o'clock. And I'd always go to confession every Saturday evening to Monsignor Driscoll. And I had to wait a long time. Another lady was in confessional, and she waited. She was there ages, and I was outside praying, and always it was a habit. I'd become a nun. I just habitually prayed that way, and I laughed to myself almost out loud. I'm not going to pray like that again. If God wanted me to be a nun, I would have been a nun a long time ago. Then finally I went into the confessional, and as I opened the door I sighed. I didn't realize I did. I was still up opening the door. Just like that, it's kind of ordinary for me to do that, I guess. I'd been doing so much thinking and waiting, I guess I'd worn out. And Father Monsignor Driscoll said, "Tired." And I said, "Father, do you think I could be a nun?" Well, he didn't see any reason why I couldn't be a nun. "You come to see me tomorrow evening." So I wasn't sure God wanted me to be a nun. I still thought if He wanted me to be a nun, I'd been a nun a long time ago. And I knew that it took a little bit more than just wanting. God had to want it too, you know. And I began to think God didn't want it. I'd been a nun a long time ago. "Well, you come and see me tomorrow evening." So I went the next evening to see Monsignor Driscoll and told him about it. And he said, then he'd come back the next evening. He said, "Yeah, I made plans for you to meet the sisters out at the, well, he says, I wrote letters to different communities around here in the area. He said I could do domestic work. I was a seamstress at Dirkson's. And that's the way he recommended me. And let me see. The rest of them all wrote little notes in that they would be very willing to even if I were older, very willing to take me as one of their members. Many times older people are very fine religious, but Sister Imelda didn't write. She called. So I was to come out to the academy to meet Sister Imelda. I knew Sister Eulalia. I belonged to the Third Order, and I loved Sister Eulalia so much. But she's really the only one that I really knew. I hadn't met Sister Imelda. So I came out on the streetcar all by myself, and I went into the academy door. It was right there off the streetcar. And I sat there and sat there and sat there. I didn't know where to go. Sister Eulalia came around thinking maybe I'd be waiting there, and sure enough, I was waiting there. She took me around to the office to meet Sister Imelda, and they said I was a little bit late to to be with this group of sisters. 2 weeks they had been here. They didn't know whether they could take me then or not. I'd wait. I'd say, I said, I'll talk with Monsignor Driscoll. They said, that's all right, we'll take you now.
So you started with the class that you were with, but you came in 2 weeks late.
My precious dear sister, who's deceased now, brought me. And her daughter, bored, she was just out of high school herself. And she's so bored. And Sister Kathleen was taking care of the postulants then. And they took me up into Boy. I've kind of forgotten the layout of that house now, but up there in the front room, right over the entrance to the doorway, and put the black veil on me.
The postulant veil.
The postulant veil. So then Sister Kathleen wanted me to go down and let my niece see me, and my niece couldn't have cared less. She was just out of high school. She was bored. Let me see. But the postulants were all out in the laundry, and they knew that I was acquainted with Sister she was a sacristan there for so long.
Joanna?
No, a young sister. I can't think of her name. She's here in the sewing room. She's the head of the bazaar things.
Victoria?
Victoria. I was acquainted with Victoria somewhat because I'd always see her at daily mass at the cathedral. She was there at the same mass I was. She was working at the for the priests there. She did their cooking for them. She looked like she was beautiful. She had white uniform, white shoes, beautiful long hair, kind of what do they call this hair that's reddish brown?
Auburn?
Auburn. Oh, she was beautiful. And that's how I knew Victoria. I sat behind her at Mass every morning at the cathedral before I went to work. And
was she a postulant then?
she was a postulant then. I was so happy to see her. She's only one of the whole community I knew. I didn't really know there were different communities. I thought some of them wore white and some black. And I really didn't know there were different communities. I soon found out. And the next day, day of silence, of course, I was out in the near the laundry, and Sister Mother General Imelda was out in the backyard talking with some, and she then was the second person that I knew. Well, not really the only one I knew, you might say. And she had been so pleasant and jolly and friendly, and then she didn't even see me. Well, it wasn't my style to see people that I knew and not say good morning. I guess I kept looking at her. And finally she said, good morning.
She was keeping silence, I guess.
Well, sure, that's the way they lived, you know, but I hadn't acquired the habit yet. The white habit, or the habit of living.
Of keeping silence.
Well, from then on, I think I was a novice when a novice. No, I was only a postman when my dear sister died with cancer. I had to borrow a black veil. And that was Sister Christine. She was just ahead of me. Black veil to go to the funeral home, but I wasn't allowed to go to the cemetery. And there were 18 of us in the class.
You told me one time that 3 of the sisters in your class died. Who were they?
Well, Sister Mary Clement. When I didn't have my clothes, I did happen to have a black dress. I could keep that for Sunday. It was long sleeves and a high neck, and they gave me the white cuffs and the white collar, so I was all set out for a costume, and Sister Mary Clement, who is deceased now, she gave me a pair of little white cuffs and white collar. She had them made, you know. She had an extra pair that she let me use. And Sister Alexis, bless her heart, she had cancer. She was one of the youngest in the group. So was Clement. And then Sister Bernadine, who really had left the community, but she's deceased also. The 3 youngest of us. I'm the oldest.
Are the other 15 still in the community?
Yes. There was a girl, Kathleen, Sister Kathleen, who left. She had bought for her reception day, she had bought a very fine bridal outfit.
And then left shortly after that, huh? Did she leave as a novice then? Was she a novice when she left?
Barely, I think. And of course, at my age, I didn't have any nieces or friends or anybody that have a bridal dress. I had nobody to borrow a bridal dress from, so they found one up in the attic. And I don't know, it seems to me like I did use somebody else's veil. I don't remember just what, but my sister, who's deceased now, said I looked
beautiful.
Nicer than most of them.
I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that.
In this bridal dress from the attic. Well, from then on, let me see. After I got out of the bridal dress, it wasn't all.
The honeymoon was soon over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was so worried all the time, though. I'd be doing the wrong thing. And I was so worried. And one time, I think it was Sister Virginia, or not Sister, Sister Virginia, bless her precious heart, we loved her. But oh my, we hit the floor when Sister Virginia came in. We surely honored her. And each of us personally had to go in and visit with Sister Imelda. And just before just that day, I had heard that we could be asked to leave, and they didn't need to explain why or anything. They asked to leave the way we went. And I was worried sick. I was just upset. Me, even knowing I was going to say anything, I said, Mother, if I have to leave, can I have my money back? I had brought what money I had, which wasn't a whole lot. I had given all my clothes away. I had given up the room I rented to live in. I had nothing. I said, if I don't have my money back, I'm a dead duck. I had never used slang either in my life because my dear dad would never permit us to use slang. Oh my, I was upset. I really was upset. It makes me want to cry to talk about it now. Mother Imelda said, we don't keep dead ducks. And I didn't say anything, but I said to myself, the world doesn't keep dead ducks either. You have to have something going for yourself. Well, I didn't have to leave. Well, my precious dear sister died with cancer. And lo and behold, I had a tumor. Oh, I was just worried sick. I thought I was going to have to leave the community because I was sick. But I'm going to be sicker. I felt so sad. And of course, Sister Eulalia was the one I knew to begin with. And they had Sister Imelda said, we'll have Sister Virginia, my novice mistress, said, Sister Eulalia is coming to talk with you. Oh, I said I would only cry. And Sister Eulalia came, and I cried just as soon as I went in and saw her. I cried, but not on her shoulder. And she says, you won't have to leave. And I said to myself, that's what you think. If I'm sick, they won't want an old woman around sick. Well, the doctor, as soon as the doctor saw me, he said, the tumor isn't cancerous. And I said, how would you know? You haven't even tested it yet. You haven't had time to, and I still thought I had cancer, thinking that they explained things to him that I was so worried. Well, I had surgery, but it wasn't malignant. Well, lots of nice things happened after that. Little Christine, Sister Christine, bless her heart, she had trouble, and she couldn't finish the year at Hampshire. And Mother Milda called me into her office one day, and she said, Sister, I'm sorry, she said, I am going to send you to Hampshire to teach. I'm sorry, but I don't have a teacher. So I went to Hampshire to teach, and I fell in love with the children, felt like they were mine, and I was to go for half a year, and sure enough I came home at the end of half the year, and I said I must write out some plans, I guess. The plan book was there. And I just took the, what did he call it, manual, and wrote page, some page. Didn't know what I was doing. And as luck would have it, the sister that followed me said I didn't know any more than that myself.
Guess who that was?
It was yours truly, Sister
Helen.
Yes, Sister Helen.
Right.
Bless her. I think she qualified. She stayed a while longer. Then I was sent to Bradley to take a sister's place because Sister Gertrude Ann was very, very sick. And Alice King took the 7th grade so I could have the 3rd grade. And they were wonderful, wonderful pupils. I loved them so much.